Orcas are often referred to as killer whales. They hunt sharks, whales, and seals. They attack animals weighing tons and come out victorious. But do you know what? They have never, not once, in all of recorded history, killed a human in the wild. Not a single confirmed fatality. Not a single attack with serious consequences. Throughout the time scientists have been observing orcas in the ocean, the count is 0. And this is where it gets interesting, because this animal is not just a benign little dolphin that enjoys riding alongside boats. It is the apex predator of the planet, a creature with a brain that, by some measures, surpasses that of humans. A being that lives in family groups, teaches its young, mourns the lost, and remembers everything. Why doesn't it bother us? What goes through its mind when an orca sees a human in the water? Today, we will examine the orca from top to bottom. Its biology, hunting techniques, family structure, intelligence, and its relationship with humans, which turns out to be far more complex than anyone could have anticipated. Stay with us until the end. There will be something that will change your perspective on this animal forever. Let's start with the basics, but important details. Orcas are called killer whales, and that immediately represents 2 misconceptions in 3 words. First of all, it's not a whale. Secondly, the term killer is a word that paints a very different picture than the one it deserves. An orca is the largest member of the dolphin family. Yes, a dolphin, just a very, very large one. Males can reach up to 9 meters in length and weigh as much as 10 tons. Females are smaller, around 7 meters and 5 to 6 tons. For comparison, that's roughly the size of 2 sedans parked bumper to bumper, alive and with teeth. The nickname killer whale is not scientific. It is a popular term. It was given by Spanish sailors in the 15th century, observing orcas attacking whales. The literal translation of the original Spanish is whale killer. Somewhere along the line, the words swapped places, resulting in killer whale. A fortunate mistake for a predator that benefits from a fearsome reputation. The black and white coloration is not just beautiful, it is camouflage honed by millions of years of evolution. The dark back makes the orca invisible from below against the dark depths. The white belly renders it invisible from above against the bright sky. Prey don't see it from either direction until it's too late. The white patches on the sides likely help members of the pod distinguish each other in murky waters during hunts. Speed: 55 kilometers per hour. For a creature weighing several tons, that's about like a truck accelerating like a sports car. The secret lies in its body structure. Powerful muscles along the spine work together with a layer of elastic connective tissue woven into the tendons like thousands of rubber bands. When the tail moves in one direction, the tissue stretches and then snaps back, like a slingshot. With each muscle contraction, 87% of the energy expended is returned. This is almost perfect biomechanics. Engineers are still studying the orca's body structure as a standard for movement in fluids. Where do orcas live? Everywhere. Literally from the Arctic to the Antarctic, from tropical seas to cold currents along the shores of Norway. Orcas are the only large marine mammals that have inhabited all the oceans of the planet without exception. They can be seen off the coast of Kamchatka and Patagonia, in the Mediterranean Sea, and in the Sea of Japan. Wherever there is water and food, there are orcas. Even in the Arctic, where few large predators venture. Their lifespan is as impressive as their size. Males typically live around 30 to 40 years, while females have a completely different story, with some living up to 90 years. 90 years is comparable to a human lifespan. This fact, as you will soon see, has colossal significance for the entire pod. The dorsal fin of a male orca is a separate story. It can reach nearly 2 meters in height, straight, distinct, and visible from afar. In contrast, the female's fin is significantly smaller and slightly curved. Researchers identify individual orcas by the shape and condition of their dorsal fins, just as people recognize acquaintances by their faces. Many orcas have unique curves, notches, or scars on their fins, allowing for lifelong identification. This enables scientists to conduct long-term observations of specific families without the need to capture the animals. Orcas' diets depend on the population they belong to. Some eat exclusively fish and can swim thousands of kilometers in pursuit of their favorite salmon. Others specialize in marine mammals, seals, sea lions, and occasionally even whales. These two groups are referred to as resident and transient orcas. There is a profound behavioral, dialectal, and even genetic divide between them. They inhabit the same waters, see each other, and completely ignore one another. Different cultures, different worlds. Some scientists have made even bolder claims, stating that transient and resident orcas are not just different populations. Their culture has divided them so deeply that it is only a matter of time before they become separate species. Not due to geography, not because mountains or oceans separate them, but because culture has created that divide. This may be the only known example of how cultural differences can lead to the emergence of a new biological species. Just as some humans have evolved the ability to digest lactose as cow's milk became part of their diet, orcas evolve based on their own choices and traditions. First, let's talk about family, because without this, nothing else can be understood. If you want to understand an orca, forget the image of a solitary predator. An orca is primarily a social and familial creature. Their family structure is such that even anthropologists find it intriguing. At the core is a matriarchy. The oldest female leads the pod, not the strongest male or the largest. It is the eldest female who remembers the most. She knows where to find food in lean years, understands the fish migration routes, and knows which areas to avoid. Her knowledge is the collective memory of the pod, accumulated over decades. When resources are scarce, pods with living elder females find food significantly more successfully than those without them. And here begins something truly remarkable. Female orcas are among the few animals on Earth that experience menopause. This is an extremely rare phenomenon in nature. Besides orcas, it is known to occur in short-finned pilot whales and narwhals, as well as in humans. For the vast majority of animals, females reproduce throughout their lives. But orca females stop giving birth around the ages of 30 to 40 and live for several more decades after that. Why is this the case? It might seem, from an evolutionary standpoint, to be pointless. A female that does not reproduce does not pass on her genes. However, science has found an answer, known as the grandmother effect. Once a female stops giving birth, she no longer competes for resources with her own children and grandchildren. All her energy goes elsewhere. She becomes a living library for the pod. In years when salmon disappears from traditional locations, it is the oldest females who know first where to go. They remember routes that haven't been used for 20 to 30 years and lead the pod to places where the younger ones have never been. Research has shown that when the oldest female dies, the mortality rate among her offspring sharply increases in the following years. The pod literally loses part of its collective intelligence. Now, about the sons. Honestly, when I learned this, I had to double-check several sources because it sounds almost unbelievable. Male orcas never leave their mother, you see? Never. They stay with her until her death. In most animals, males leave their natal group upon reaching maturity. This is a basic evolutionary strategy that prevents inbreeding. Male orcas remain with their mothers, mate with females from other pods during brief encounters, and return home. The consequences of this are astonishing. When a mother dies, the mortality rate of her adult sons sharply increases in the next 2 years. Moreover, the older the son, the greater the risk. An adult male weighing 8 tons, aged 20 to 30, still relies on his mother. This completely contradicts the usual perceptions of predators as self-sufficient survival machines. A pod typically consists of 3 generations: the grandmother, her children, and her grandchildren, all together, always close by. This is called a matrilineal group. Several such groups that regularly stay together form a subpod, and multiple subpods make up a clan. Each pod has its own dialect. This is not a metaphor, it is literally true. Scientists began recording and analyzing the sounds of different pods back in the 1970s and discovered that each group has its own set of calls and whistles that others do not possess. Young orcas learn the dialect from their mothers and other pod members, just as children learn a language. From the dialect, one can determine to which clan an animal belongs. It is a cultural marker, like an accent among people from different regions. Moreover, pods with similar dialects tend to have closer familial ties. Let me know in the comments if you were aware that orcas have such a complex social life. I'm sure for most, this is a complete surprise. Orcas mourn their dead. This is perhaps the hardest thing I learned while preparing this video. In 2018, a female from a Pacific pod carried the body of her stillborn calf on her nose for 17 days, refusing to let it go. When the body started to sink, she would dive down and bring it back up again. The other pod members stayed nearby, occasionally touching the calf as well. Researchers observing this said it was impossible to watch the scene without feeling a deep emotional impact. A few times a year, when conditions are right, several subpods of a clan come together. This is called a superpod. Tens, sometimes hundreds of orcas gather in one place. They do not hunt together. Rather, it is a social event. They swim in circles, communicate, the young play, and the adults reconnect with those they haven't seen in a long time. Researchers have described these gatherings as something akin to a celebration, if one could apply such a term to orcas. But witnessing it, they say, truly feels that way. Orcas have a hierarchy, conflicts, and seniority. The oldest females lead the hunting. They decide where and how to attack. The young observe and learn. Sometimes, the elders intentionally create teaching situations, releasing already caught prey so the young can practice on their own. There have been instances where the elders brought live prey to the young, who were not yet capable of hunting. much like presenting a toy to a child. This is not instinct. It is a culture of knowledge passed down through generations. Talking about orca behavior without discussing their brains is like discussing a computer's operation without mentioning the processor. Let's take a look inside. The brain of an orca weighs between 5 to nearly 7 kilograms. For comparison, the human brain weighs about 1.4 kilograms. In terms of absolute size, orca brains rank second among all animals, second only to the sperm whale. But mass isn't the only important factor. There is a structural measure known as the gyrification index, which gauges how folded and convoluted the cerebral cortex is. The more folds there are, the more nerve cells can fit into a given volume, and the faster information is processed. For humans, this index is 2.2. For bottlenose dolphins, it's 5.6. And for orcas, it's 5.7. This is the highest figure among all animals on Earth. The orca brain is folded more than that of a human. What struck me most in this subject was not size or speed, but this brain. A creature we tend to perceive as just a large fish. Yet it thinks, remembers, feels, and perhaps even has self-awareness. What does this mean in practice? Orcas are capable of complex planning. They understand cause and effect relationships. They have long-term memories. They learn not only from their own experiences, but also by observing others. They pass knowledge to the next generation, which scientists refer to as cultural transmission of skills. The island cortex deserves special mention. This unique brain structure, which in humans is associated with, is the most remarkable, is the hunting of fish. Different populations of orcas have various specializations, but they all share one thing. No single strategy works alone. It's a team effort involving planning, role distribution, and tactical adjustments made on the fly during an attack. Such coordination is extremely rare in nature. The first strategy, and perhaps the most impressive, involves hunting fish. Orcas use sophisticated techniques to catch their prey, often working in groups to create waves that wash seals off ice floes, or by creating a bubble net to trap fish. This level of cooperation and strategizing demonstrates not only intelligence, but also an understanding of social dynamics within the pod. They can adapt their hunting methods based on the specific environment and the type of prey they are targeting. Moreover, the communication among orcas during these hunts is crucial. Each member of the pod seems to have an innate sense of timing and position, ensuring that they work together effectively. This cooperation is not just about individual skill, it's about the collective effort of the group, showcasing a remarkable level of social intelligence. In summary, the emotional depth, self-awareness, and impressive hunting strategies of orcas highlight their status as apex predators in the ocean, showcasing complex social structures and advanced cognitive abilities that continue to fascinate researchers and marine enthusiasts alike. The most spectacular. Intentional beaching. Off the coast of Argentina, near the Valdez Peninsula, orcas have mastered a breathtaking hunting technique. They literally beach themselves, capturing sea lions right at the water's edge and returning back to the ocean. It sounds simple. In practice, it's one of the most complex and dangerous maneuvers in the animal kingdom. To beach themselves and come back, an orca needs to reach a speed of about 30 kilometers per hour just above the water's surface, accurately calculate the slope of the shore, time the wave perfectly, and manage to flip parallel to the shore before going into shallow water. A fraction of a second, a meter of space, and everything can go wrong. If they miss, they get stuck. Gravity starts to press down on their lungs. Their muscles can't support their own weight. Without water, an orca can die within hours. A mistake can cost them their life. That's why this is taught for years. The mother first checks the shore repeatedly on her own, trying out the angle, assessing the pebbles, watching how the wave recedes. Then she gently nudges her calf toward the water's edge, just to let it feel the solid ground beneath its body, overcoming the instinctive fear of land. Then she demonstrates it herself in full force. Only after that does the calf make its first solo attempt. Initial attempts often fail. Sometimes the calf goes too far and gets stuck. In that case, the mother swims close and demonstrates how to rock back and forth to get free. Sometimes it takes hours. This is a real school with exams that can be failed. Along the Valdez coastline, there are about 30 orcas. Of these, only 13 have mastered the beaching technique. The rest either couldn't or didn't dare to try. It is truly an elite skill held by less than half of the pod. The second strategy is wave hunting in Antarctica. If beaching is audacious, this is pure engineering thought. Antarctic orcas hunt seals resting on floating ice. The problem? Reaching the seal directly is impossible. The ice is solid, and even a very strong orca cannot break it with a blow. But it can create a wave. A group of orcas synchronously accelerates underwater about 15 meters from the ice, as close to the surface as possible without surfacing. The seal cannot see them, only the dark water. At the last moment, they all dive sharply underwater. The movement of their bodies creates a whirlpool that generates a wave of a meter or more. The first wave cracks the ice. The seal scuttles over to a larger piece. The orcas surround the new ice and begin to methodically, wave after wave, reduce its size. They clear away the ice debris that hinders their acceleration. They push the ice into open water, where it's easier to attack. They think several steps ahead. When the ice shrinks to the right size, the final wave comes. The seal tumbles into the water. Scientists who witnessed this for the first time said they found it hard to believe their eyes. Such a level of coordination and foresight in an animal. According to one of the researchers note that this exceeds the level of teamwork that most groups of humans are capable of. The third strategy is hunting grey whales. This is the most arduous and prolonged operation in the orca's arsenal. A grey whale weighs 40 tons. Even for a solitary orca, this is an insurmountable task, which is why teamwork comes into play again. The pod locates a female grey whale with a calf during migration. 2 or 3 orcas target the mother, ramming and distracting her, preventing her from focusing on defense. Meanwhile, the others deal with the calf. The tactic is not to bite, but to ram. The massive, heavy skull of the orca serves as a weapon. They strike the calf, trying to weaken it, then begin to push it underwater, not allowing it to surface for air. The mother defends fiercely, but there are too many of them. Such an attack can last for 2 to 3 hours, sometimes longer. When it ends, the orcas only consume the tongue and the soft tissues of the mouth. The whale's blubber is too thick to penetrate. But even this amounts to hundreds of kilograms of food, for which the pod has invested hours of effort. The conscious, rational choice is to take what can be reached and then leave. Researchers who have observed grey whale hunts have described what they witnessed as one of the most complex collective actions ever recorded in animals. During the attack, each member of the pod knows their role. Some attack, others hold position, while others wait for their turn and rotate when the frontline orcas tire. This is not a chaotic pack. It is a coordinated team where everyone understands the common goal. The most striking aspect of this hunt is the persistence. Orcas do not back down. If an attack fails, they regroup and start over. They can pursue their target for hours, changing tactics on the fly. It is this persistence, combined with intelligence, that makes them unbeatable at the top of the food chain. Finally, the fourth strategy, which has astonished the entire scientific community, is hunting great white sharks. The great white shark is a symbol of ocean terror, measuring 3 to 4 meters with powerful jaws, the epitome of a solitary predator. Yet, before an orca, it is practically helpless. Orcas pursue sharks in pairs or small groups. They ram the shark in the side, stunning it, then flip it onto its back. In this position, the shark enters a state of tonic immobility, a reflexive catalepsy that renders it completely motionless. It does not resist. Then comes the most incredible part. Orcas, with surgical precision, cut open the shark and extract only the liver, nothing more. The liver of a great white shark can weigh several hundred kilograms and is rich in oily fat with immense caloric value. Orcas know this and take only what they need. The rest of the body simply sinks to the ocean floor. This phenomenon, where fear of a predator alters the behavior of prey throughout the region, is referred to by scientists as the ecology of fear. Orcas influence not only those they consume, but also those who are merely aware of their presence. When sharks leave an area due to orcas, it changes the entire ecosystem. The pressure on the fish they hunt shifts dramatically. The distribution of sea lions is changing. The behavior of other predators is also shifting. The mere presence of orcas triggers a chain reaction for miles around. Great white sharks are so afraid of orcas that when they encounter them, they immediately flee the hunting area and sometimes don't return for over a year. Researchers in South Africa have observed that when orcas appear off the coast, sharks within a several-kilometer radius disappear within hours. The tourist diving business with sharks in those areas comes to a complete standstill for a time. Did you know that great white sharks are afraid of something? Let us know in the comments. Was this a surprise to you? And now we arrive at the question we started with. Why do orcas not harm humans? There has never been a confirmed fatal attack by an orca on a human in the wild. 0. Throughout the history of systematic observations, the number is 0. There have been instances where orcas approach divers closely, circling around yachts for hours. In recent years, off the coasts of Spain and Portugal, there have been reports of orcas approaching sailing yachts and nudging them. This initially frightened sailors. Some vessels sustained damage, but scientists investigated and found that the young orcas were likely just playing with an interesting object, similar to how younger orcas off the coast of Argentina practice on seaweed before actual hunting. No humans were harmed in these interactions. Why don't they attack us? There is no definitive answer, but there are several theories. First, humans do not fall within their dietary preferences. Orcas from different populations specialize in specific prey: fish, seals, whales. A human in the water does not resemble any of their usual hunting targets in shape, smell, or sound. The second reason is intelligence. Orcas are smart enough to recognize humans as something distinct, not a threat, not food, but a different category altogether. The third, and perhaps the most convincing explanation, is culture. If no mother ever hunted humans, then no one taught the young ones to do so. Everything an orca knows is learned from its family. Hunting preferences, strategies, dialects, these are all passed down from generation to generation. The tradition of not attacking humans may have developed just like any other tradition within the pod, and has now become a part of their cultural code. A completely different story unfolded in captivity. For several decades, orcas were kept in marine parks, primarily in the United States. Shows, pools, trainers, millions of spectators. This seemed entertaining and safe until it became clear that it was not. There have been recorded instances of attacks on trainers, including tragic outcomes, events that have never occurred in the wild throughout the history of observations. This sparked a serious discussion about what is truly happening to these animals behind the glass of the pool. One conclusion scientists have made, with a fair degree of certainty, is that an animal with high intelligence, a complex social life, and strong family bonds, when isolated, deprived of family, familiar space, and meaningful context, behaves differently in their natural environment. This speaks not so much about the orcas themselves, as it does about what happens to a highly intelligent being in conditions for which it was not designed. I remember when I first read about this, I caught myself thinking, quote, _0___. Nowadays, in many countries, keeping orcas in captivity is restricted or completely banned. Yet in the ocean, orcas still don't engage with us, even though they could. Despite their power, orcas are vulnerable, and the threats they face have nothing to do with natural predators. They have none. These threats are created by us. The first and most serious issue is chemical pollution. Polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, are a group of industrial chemicals that were used worldwide until the 1980s and then banned. However, they haven't disappeared from the ocean. They are virtually indestructible. They accumulate in the fatty tissues of marine animals and concentrate at every level of the food chain. Orcas, at the top of this chain, accumulate everything. Female orcas pass PCBs to their calves through their milk in the first months of life. This means that every new calf begins its life with a dose of toxins. High concentrations suppress the immune system and reduce reproductive function. Some populations in Europe, particularly off the coast of the UK, now number only a handful of individuals. Scientists state plainly, without change, these populations are doomed to extinction. No calves have been born there for several years. The second threat is the depletion of the food supply. Resident populations that feed on salmon are suffering from its decline. Salmon is diminishing due to industrial fishing, the destruction of spawning rivers, and changes in water temperature. Orcas have to travel further and further. Females are giving birth less often, and fewer calves are surviving. The southern resident population off the coast of North America, one of the most studied in the world, now numbers just over 70 individuals. This is already a critical point. The third threat is noise pollution. For a creature whose entire life revolves around sound, this is a silent catastrophe. Constant noise from ship engines, military sonars, and industrial activities literally drowns out their world. They cannot hunt properly, nor can they communicate effectively. This leads to stress, disorientation, and disruption of social bonds within the pod. The fourth threat is accidental entanglement in fishing nets. Young individuals, who have not yet learned to recognize danger, suffer the most. For a pod where every calf counts, this is a blow to the future. Orcas are now listed in international conservation registers. The status of regional populations is recognized as endangered. The effectiveness of conservation efforts will largely depend on how quickly pollution levels can be reduced and the food supply restored. Scientists and conservation organizations are tackling these threats, reducing salmon catch limits in key regions and implementing restrictions. Shipping activities near the habitats of sensitive populations have been restricted in Canada, particularly concerning the southern resident orca population. Several countries have established marine protected areas where fishing is limited. However, the main issue of PCBs in water and in the fatty tissues of marine animals will persist for decades, even if all pollution sources were to stop immediately. These chemicals are already integrated into the ecosystem and will continue to circulate through food chains for a long time. This is perhaps the most difficult aspect of the issue, the realization that the problem has been developing for 100 years, while the solution will take much longer. The orca is not just an animal, it is a mirror in which we unexpectedly see something familiar: family, education, grief, culture, intelligence. It could harm us, but it doesn't, and I believe this speaks more about the orca than all hunting strategies combined. If you found this information useful, I would appreciate your support. My contact number is in the description.